Hey everyone! So, today you and I are going to talk about project delivery strategy. So let's get into it. Now, there are today probably two major players in terms of trendy project delivery buzzwords. And I don't see anyone actually following all of this to heart. I would say that these have been kind of like everybody does it their own way. Like everybody has their own strategy for how to deliver projects. And I'm not going to talk to you about the two. Well, the two, if you're interested, is for the most part Scrum or Agile development and Waterfall. Those are probably the most common today, at least from my perspective. And Waterfall is the idea that you plan everything out ahead of time virtually, and you hand off the finished work to the next department in your delivery process and until you deliver the finished project. Now, this is the way that the world has been working for a long time. A lot of this is probably the most established way of working. It's probably the way that I suppose most people imagine it in their heads when you're delivering something. Think of it as an assembly line for a car or whatever. First you get the body, then there's one department who does that, and then you get the wheels on, which there's another department that does that, and then so forth and so forth. And then you have Agile or Scrum or whatever you want to call it. There are a few flavors where you have the approach of continuously delivering small pieces of value in cycles and then iterating over and over and over again without doing any type of handoffs or anything like that. You have a more holistic team composition where ideally a representative from everybody who needs to be involved is there working as one unit in order to deliver value. Now, I've been working in both of these approaches, and for the most part, they work with benefits and consequences, as with everything basically. The one red thread that I've seen, regardless, because I've been in projects where the waterfall approach has worked very nicely, or rather I've been in a situation where that has actually worked nice. And I know that that's a very controversial statement in today's IT world, because everybody hates waterfall and everybody loves Scrum and Agile development. But I've been in Agile development processes where I think it absolutely sucks. I'm sorry, there are absolutely things that are nice about it. There's always something that's nice about each process, and there's always a lot of stuff that I don't like. But if I'm objective and I just look at, rather maybe we should first define what I use to define the success of a project. Usually there's a few things that I consider when I'm asking the question, is this a good process? Is this working for me? The first and foremost thing I always ask is, how effectively can we deliver something? And that's a tricky question, because a lot of people just measure, all right, how fast can we meet the deadline? But I also, thanks to the input of an old colleague of mine, and if you're watching this, Mark, you are a man that has, we are not fit to, this world is not good enough for you, because this is one of my most favorite things you ever said. He said that just delivering a feature or delivering something, just measuring the time it took to deliver something is not true. It's not the total, it's not the whole truth. Because if you're delivering something and there's a lot of issues or bugs or stuff that comes back, then that time needs to be accounted for too. And that's what I find I find this a lot when I'm working in depending on who I'm working with. And I always consider this as much as possible. I always measure how much value can we ship without it coming back and biting us in the ass. That's my most important consideration when I consider a project delivery strategy, regardless of who I'm working with, or regardless what you want to label it as. That's number one. Number two is how much miscommunication or issues during the work process are we facing as a team when we are delivering? Because if it doesn't matter if it's Kanban, Scrum, if it's Waterfall, it doesn't matter. If it works for you, if everybody on the team is happy, and everybody's, we're meeting requirement number one, that we're shipping the most amount of value without a lot of issues coming back to us, then who the fuck cares what it's called? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which one you pick. And this is the second consideration, as I touched on. How well does it work for your team? I was speaking to this, and I think this is great. This is an awesome example. An old classmate of mine, he had been working at a company where they had cubicles. All a la IBM back in the day. They had cubicles, and today Google and the more trendy startup companies, they've been pitching the idea of open environments for not a million years, but a really, really long time. And so they had this office culture type of person came into his office and forced everybody into this open environment. And it actually damaged the productivity of a lot of the people in there. And this is classic. It's, something's cool, something's trendy, so we will be cool and trendy. And then it turns out that maybe it wasn't the best idea in the world. I'm not saying that open environments is a bad thing. I'm just saying that you have to kind of sense the waters, because every group of people is different. So you always have to account for that when you're doing something. That's why you have to kind of retrofit a solution, try something out, see if it works, and don't feel bad if you kind of need to tweak it or go back to something that was working better previously. Because just because something like open environments, for example, is awesome for everybody working at Google, doesn't mean that it's the right fit for the tax office here in Sweden. Or maybe it is, I don't know. But where am I going with this? So these two things are my main considerations when I ask myself, what's a good project strategy? And I can really only tell you that the thing that I've found to be, regardless of what you want to call it, the most effective way of delivering value and delivering a project, the one true tip I can give you is keep it small. Keep it as small as you humanly can. Because I have found that the larger thing that you're trying to estimate, it doesn't matter if it's Waterfall or if it's Scrum. People keep telling me that Scrum is solving this problem with delivering too big stories and and having issues with too big scope and stuff of that nature. This is not true. Today I have the same issue. We estimate epics just as we might as well just call it Waterfall. We can call it whatever you want, but the problem is still there. And that's what I'm trying to sell you on here. I'm trying to say that figure out a work process that works for you at your company. Doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. Figure out, you can try things out. You should absolutely try things out. But the one thing you should really always, at least from my experience, have in your head is how big is the project? Can we split it up and make it smaller? Because the smaller amount of work you're estimating and you're trying to account for, the better. And this feels unnatural. I know it does. It feels weird because people want to think in terms of the whole thing, and they're going to try to convince you that you're supposed to estimate and deliver a really big piece of work. And then there you are trying to say that no, that's not the way to go. Think of it as building a bridge. When you're building a bridge, everybody's talking about the finished project. All the signs, everything is going to be structured in terms of the finished thing. But you don't build the whole thing in one go. You build it in sections. Why are you building it in sections? Well, because if I build a part of the bridge, I'll give you a good example. It actually happened not far from my hometown. They started by building the whole thing. Or rather, they built it all in one go without doing any measurements or anything like that. They simply built the whole bridge. Or rather, when they were halfway through, the bridge collapsed. And the reason why it collapsed was because they were on a tight schedule and they hadn't checked that the structure, like the integrity of the ground that the bridge was standing on, was good enough for each section of the bridge, which meant that it collapsed. This is what I'm saying. This is the issue, or I hope this makes sense to you. This is an issue. Having that approach is not that great. But what they're doing today, which is, in my opinion, the way that they should have done it to begin with, is that they built a portion of the bridge, looked at it, measured, checked the ground, checked the structures, checked the integrity, checked their budget, and then they built the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. What's beautiful about that approach is that when you have a habit of creating the minimum amount of value that adds to the whole and measuring that, you can adjust accordingly. You can discover issues quicker. You will not build more than is necessary in order for you to create a sense of confidence for everybody involved that this is the right way to go. But if you're building everything in one go, you can't really do that. So regardless of your process, regardless of what you want to call the thing that you're doing at your company, I urge you, consider having the mindset that you always split things up in the smallest portions possible, deliver it, and then you measure. It's been working out pretty well for me. Have a great day.